Welcome to Data Meets Design. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with Looker Studio and build out your first report. Let's get to it.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first report. You're going to go to lookerstudio.google.com, and after you have signed up, it's going to take you to this page where you're going to click on blank report to get started. And what this is going to do is take you to the page where all the data connectors are going to be found. So you have, for example, Google Analytics, Google Ads, Search Console, amongst many others, and also some third-party tools that you can find here as well. So for this example, I'm going to use Google Analytics and work off of the blog site that I have. So once you find your data source, click Add, and you're going to get one more pop-up. Click Add to Report. And what you're going to notice is that it's going to default to a table. So you'll notice that in my case, I'm not populating any data, and that's because my website stopped collecting data after a certain point. So first thing I'm going to do is change the date range, and we'll examine 2024's data. That way we have something to show. Let's go to October. It's about the last time I remember it collecting data. So now data is populating. All right, so by default, you're going to have a table. But if you notice, there's two tabs. The first one here on this row is going to be your properties tab. And that's where you're going to fill out your dimensions, your metrics, and create your setup and also your styling. And on the right tab, you're going to have data. So this is going to be the data source that you're connected to and all the metrics and dimensions listed underneath here. So typically I like to work with just chart or just the properties tab. It just makes things a little bit cleaner for me to see. Now with this selected, I can change what chart type for whatever data I'm looking to present. So for example, we have a time series chart, we have bar charts, there's many different types. So going back to table for an example, one of the important things to know is the difference between dimensions and metrics. Dimensions are going to be anything that's qualitative. So think of dates, events, think of marketing channels, and things of that nature. A metric, on the other hand, is going to be qualitative or quantitative. So meaning anything that's numeric, views, sessions, transactions, anything that has a number tied to it is going to fall underneath metrics. So as an example, let's say we want to measure our landing pages and understand what pages convert the most or what pages drive the most transactions. I would set the dimension to landing page and metric to transactions. And then you'll see how many transactions each page got. So in my case, these are blog posts, so they don't really get conversions. So maybe we'll look at page views, or sessions rather. So for sessions, you'll see what page drove the most sessions, and it listed in descending order. So we're going to delete that here, and we're going to get started with a blank report. So some of the controls I want to mention is that if you look underneath controls, one thing for sure is that you want to keep in mind the audience that you're designing for. More often than not, stakeholders are going to want to have a date range and measure data based upon a certain time frame. So I always like to throw that in there, is have a date range. It's going to make life a lot easier. And then over here on this tab, you're going to find your charts. These are some community visualizations that you can explore. You have your data tab if you wanted to add additional data sources, and some other controls like adding pages and things of that nature. One thing I want to mention is theme and layout. So by default, Looker Studio has a few themes that you can toggle through and play around with and see which theme you like best. More often than not, I like to customize mine. And this just came out. This is modern charts, so just change the way the chart types look. I prefer, so I'm going to toggle it on. So let's just play around here with some visualizations. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is add an image. Let's imagine we're going to do this for a client. So I'm going to throw in a sample logo here and start to create my layout. Now, one thing is important is design principles. You want to make sure that your layout is clean, that you're following alignment, using color contrast, And following some of these principles, they're going to make for a much better visual design and make it very easy for your audience to pick up on the story that you're trying to tell with your data. So most of the time, you're going to want to drop in some high level metrics. The perfect chart for that is going to be scorecards. So I'm going to drop a few of those in here. Now, don't worry about the alignment or the visual aspect of anything just yet. Right now, we're just putting in our elements, and then we'll worry about some of the design factors afterwards. So I'm dropping in 3 scorecards, and let's set up the data here. So notice that nothing is populating, and the reason for that is that we need to select a date range that's going to bring in some data. So I'm going to fix the date range. When you leave it on auto, that's going to populate the data basically brand new every time that you log in. It's going to be based off of the day that you log in. So I'm going to set mine to a fixed range, and I'm going to change it to 2024 from January 1st to, let's just say, October 31st. Cancel that by accident. So January 1st to October 31st. That should give us something to work with. And notice that as soon as I updated that day range, everything else here populated. So let's start changing some of these metrics. So for views, I'll leave that. Sessions are good. Maybe we can change this to, let's look at what other metrics we might have. Let's maybe put in new users. And let's imagine that we're tracking maybe organic traffic coming into the site. So right now, nothing impressive about this. Let's play around with theme and layout. And let's say we go and customize the theme. We can change, for example, the typography, the report background color, that is. You can change the component background colors. What I'm going to do is put in a border shadow. So I'm going to make that default. Notice how that populates on every element. And notice the squares. I'm going to change it to more of a rounder edges. Put 5 pixels. If you go higher, you'll notice that they get more rounder. So I'm going to keep it at 5. And we'll leave it at that. All right, so we have our top level KPIs. Let's add in a couple more charts. Maybe we want to add in maybe a bar chart here. Let's see what we can play with. Maybe we can change this to traffic sources. So let's look for source. Maybe first user source and see what that populates. So right here, we're getting the different sources of search engines that users will be coming in from. So Google being the top, then you have direct, Bing, and Bible study tools. That's more of a backlink. So, all right, now we're starting to get into source of where users are coming from. Let's drop in a time series chart to measure how traffic has grown over time. And again, don't worry about the visual aspect just yet because we're going to work on all that. Right now, we want to just get everything set up. So the dimension is date, which is what we want. We want to measure time. And now over here with metric, we're going to change that, let's say, to new users, since we were looking to measure in the traffic that's coming in over time. And now we have some data to work with. And if we wanted to, we can add more data. But the thing is, we want to make sure that we give enough white space so that it doesn't look like it's so cluttered. So now I'm going to start to work on some design and work on resizing. So that way this is more of a visually appealing report and communicates the story. So let's start with our day range. I find this to be pretty large. So let's maybe shorten that a little bit. Something around there might do. Let's make sure that our logo is aligned well with our date range. I'm pretty happy with that. And the size of our charts, we should probably fix that as well. So I typically like my charts to be the same size. Let's see, how does that look? If it ends up being too big, we just shorten it down a bit. And it might be a little bit too big. So I might make this one slightly smaller. Put this close by and do the same. And what I want to do is align things properly. So if you click one element and another with shift and right click it, align vertically to middle, make sure that these are aligned. And then on this side, what I'll do is click this one, click the day range. That kind of got in the way a little bit. And right click. Let's do it again. Let's try that one more time. All right, click, shift, click. Let's try that. Maybe the opposite way. All right, here we go. And now align horizontally, and let's click right. So that way those two are aligned properly. And we'll do the same with the logo. This time align horizontally left. These here. Gonna align this vertically. Let's try middle, that worked. And maybe see if distribute horizontally will work. All right, so distribute horizontally makes this all spaced out evenly. Let's grab that as a group. Maybe bring this more towards the center here. All right, now we have some high level data to work with. So another thing is the padding. You notice that the numbers in the views are a little bit too high up. So if I click that, we can go to style. And now we have some more options when it comes to styling everything. What I don't like is to have just long numbers. So what I'm going to do is change the chart type to a scorecard with compact numbers. And I'll do the same for the rest. That way it just looks a little bit more cleaner. And now when I go back here, click on an element, click style again. Let's fix the padding on that. So we keep scrolling down. We go to padding, it's on auto. Let's try to change maybe the padding top and let's see if that affects it. So 16, still a little bit high. So we'll raise it a little bit more. So we'll try maybe 24. That looks a lot better. And now what you could do is you can right click it, click copy, click your next element and paste special, paste style only, and it'll transfer the styles. So paste style only, and here it is. All right. So another thing you can do is you can actually extract the theme from a image that you upload. So if you right click your image, you can click extract theme from image and notice it'll give you some pre-populated aesthetics. So for example, let's take this one and apply it. Notice that everything changes. Personally, I'm not a fan of the one that this populated, but give it a try with your images and see if that helps. I prefer maybe adding my own colors. So let's play around with the charts again. And let's start again with a bar chart. And let's change some of the styling around this. So what we have the option is to show a title. So I would recommend it because then you can communicate fastly to your audience what it is that you're displaying. So in this case, views by first user source. I'll probably change this to maybe like first source. So views by source, just for the sake of keeping it compact. And I'll probably bold it and change the color. Black is not really the best color to use for hardly anything. It's a little too bold. Try going with like maybe a darker gray. In my case, we'll do about that. Maybe try either a darker gray or a darker blue and see which one looks better. right, so we have our darker blue, and it's already saved there. And what I personally like to do is I don't like grid lines in the back. I think they distract and cause, a little bit too much cognitive load. So what I would do is go to the grid, which will be actually on the bottom. So right here, this is the grid color, and click transparent. And now it just looks a little bit more cleaner. Notice that the font is a little bit off, so we'll try to correct that now. Let's see if we make the font size a little bit shorter. Oftentimes that'll line things up a little bit properly. So let's try, oh, that's the title. So let's try going to the Axis font. That's 12 pixels, maybe 9, probably a little bit too small. So 12 might be it. We might have to leave that. So that we'll probably leave just for the sake of readability. And let's carry on over to our time series chart. Let's show a title. And this is new users over time. Bold it. Change the color to that dark blue that we were using before. Let's see if it'll work. Sometimes it doesn't, it's not always so intuitive. You actually have to go back here and copy the hex code at times. All right, let's try that again. All right, looks like that did it. And again, I like to take off the grid lines. So let's go right down there. And let's make that transparent. It's starting to look a lot more cleaner compared to when we first started this. Let's see what other things we can do. So depending on how your data is laid out, you see this is actually from a long time ago. You could add points in your time series charts. So you can click show points and then it'll populate that. For this amount of data, that long of a time period, wouldn't recommend adding that. It just makes it too cluttered. So I would take that off and just kind of have it, standard. That way it's a little bit more cleaner, a little more readable. You do have the option of adding a trend line. So for example, linear, and it'll show you where you're trending over time. I'll just take that off for right now. Let's see if it'll give us the same issue on fixing the text. Say we were to drop it to 9, it makes it a little bit more readable. So in that case, see if 10 will allow it. 10's a little better. So let's see if we can get away with doing the same thing with our bar chart. And let's see, we can maybe drop it to 10, see if that'll work. Still on the side, but I'll keep it just for the sake of it being uniformed. All right, so let's take a preview. If you click view, you can see what it looks like. All right, so far we have a small report to work with. We got our high level KPIs, a date range that you can play with, the brand logo at the top, and you have some basic metrics, your views by source, and then new users over time. So very straightforward way to put your data together. If you want to continue to spruce it up, you absolutely can. So let's go back to our scorecards and let's add in a spark line and add date. And now you can see a mini line chart. And let's see if that does anything that we like. You can actually put a fill and smooth it out. The only thing I'm not a big fan of when it comes to the spark lines at times is that they place it way too low at the bottom. So it's up to you whether you want to keep that or not. In this case, I'm probably going to remove it. So let's go, or you can also click show as progress too, because you can compare up and down if your performance went up and down over time. So let's go back to our views, and I'm going to go back to style, and let's change the label color. It's the same blue that we had. And maybe what we'll do is enlarge this a little bit. Try to get everything the exact same size. And normally, when you enlarge it a little bit, you'll be able to see your spark line a little bit better. So let's try adding that now. It looks a little bit better now. And what you can do here is copy the styles, paste special. And now go here to add your spark line. You don't need to have the spark line since you're measuring things out here, but if you want to show at a glance a mini time series, you can add it. All right, so we have our scorecards, we have our bar chart, and we have our line graph. If you want to add some contrast, you can start to color some of these scorecards. You don't want to get too carried away with that. Use about 3 to 5 colors at max, because at the end of the day, it's what the data communicates that matters, and the design is supposed to support that story being told. So let's say we want to add in a fill. Let's go down to the background. And what we could do is maybe add something like a light blue and see how that goes. See, for me, that's not enough contrast, so I would remove that. You can also add maybe a complementary color to give it some pop, but let's play around with it until we find something we like. So we'll try going with that similar blue and maybe go with something a little bit more on a lighter side of it, things. A blue, almost gray. Let's see if that will work out a little bit better. Look like that didn't fill in, so we'll try that one more time. All right. Still a little bit too dark for my liking. So let's go a little bit lighter. See if it'll allow me to edit the color here. And we can take down some of that transparency even. Maybe something around, right around here might do it. Okay, that's a little bit better. So let's click on copy and let's paste the styles. Accidentally hit the wrong paste, so we'll Command Z that. Paste the styles again. And at this point now, we can differentiate the two if we wanted to by changing the colors of the lines here. So we go to style. And let's say we click line color. We can switch it to maybe a complementary color. So let's go with something like a green. This might be a little bit too bold, so we'll try to make it a little bit darker and see if that looks any good. And that's something you can use to kind of throw in some contrast if you want to separate the two. Personally, I kind of like the blue a little bit better. And so right here, if you were to click view, at this point now you have a high level dashboard or report that you can share with either a colleague or a client or your stakeholders, and you can continue to build upon this this is just the first rendition of this. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll build upon this more so that way we can create a very robust dashboard that'll speak to different metrics. So hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. If you did, make sure that you subscribe and click the bell notification, as we're going to be putting a lot more content on data visualization and design best practices. So stay tuned.